Hey, room 7. So last we left off on Ms Bixby's last day, Steve and Topher and Brand had just left McDonald's. They ran into Steve's sister, and Topher had some flashbacks to the time Ms Bixby really made him feel special for collecting and keeping his artwork, even doodles that he had put into the recycling. They were about to walk in the hospital when Brand said that they needed to wait before we go in there. There's something I've got to tell you. So we start with Brand's chapter now. There's a difference between the truth and the whole truth. That's why they give that big spiel in court when they make you place your hand on the Bible and promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Because they know if they don't, people will try and sneak around it. They will leave out the details, skip over the incriminating stuff, keep the worst parts to themselves. She told me I shouldn't tell anyone. She said it was against school policy, that the school board would have an issue with it, and my father would probably frown upon it. That maybe society at large would frown upon it. Who knows? Maybe she could even get fired, though she didn't think so. But the truth is this. I saw Ms Bixby every Friday for 2.5 months straight. I don't mean every Friday during school. I mean afterward. She would pick me up at my house, except not at my house because I didn't want my father to know. So instead I waited for her at the corner. And she would pull up in the little white hatchback, the one with the bumper sticker that reads, "I love brains," which she insisted was both a zombie reference and a warning to most of the men out there. She would pick me up and toss her satchel in the back and offer me a stick of gum, which I always took because I was worried that my breath smelled like school lunch. And she would drive us to the same place as the Friday before. We would spend the hour together like always, and then she would drop me off at the corner again and wait till I got in the door with my bags and waved goodbye. Every Friday, 10 Fridays in a row, starting with the day she found me nearly collapsed in the snow, all the way up until the last one, when she found my father collapsed on the porch. The whole truth is this. I waited for each Friday like it was Christmas Eve, or better yet, like it was March 31st. So that's referencing how much his dad loved April Fools. I would stand at the corner with my arms crossed, unconsciously holding my breath, trying to look cool by trying not to try to look cool. My list was usually stuffed in my back pocket, along with the money I had taken for the bread box. $100. I would see her Ford come around the corner, and she would flash her lights, or roll down the window and ask me if I needed a ride, even though she knew the answer, even though that was the whole point. And I would smile and nod and buckle in and look down at my shoes as she drove, or maybe just stare out the window. She would give me permission to change the radio station, to find something I liked, but I never touched it, no matter what it was. It was never the same kind of music. Sometimes it was classical. Sometimes it was talk radio. Once it was metal. She said she'd gotten in a little tiff with another teacher that day and needed Iron Maiden to help her unwind. She liked just about everything. She had her favorites. She always turned it up, way up, when the Stones came on. Her car always smelled like coffee. We would park at the end of the row for no other reason than she said it would never hurt anyone to walk, and we would pause outside to admire the shoots of green brave, enough to sprout in early March, improbably breaking through the frost. Then she would pull out her list and I'd pull out mine, and we would each grab a cart, and I'm pretty sure I didn't stop smiling the whole time I was with her. Wait a minute, she took you shopping? Steve stares at me, mouth like a Cheerio. Grocery shopping? The Kroger up on 61st, by the Pizza Hut and what used to be the video store. Every Friday? It's a long walk, I explained. Groceries are heavy and my dad can't drive. That's not the whole truth. He could drive. The car is fixed that he could use his hands to stop and go. He just chose not to. And he always chose not to leave the house. But he couldn't choose not to eat. Or at least he hadn't yet. So I walked to the grocery store. It was only 2 miles. But 2 miles is an eternity when you are carrying a gallon of milk, a bag of potatoes, and 6 family-size boxes of mac and cheese. 2 miles feels like torture when you walk it in the freezing cold rain. The revolving door of the hospital spins, and an old couple comes out holding hands. Steve is shaking his head. Topher is silent. I should have told you guys earlier, but she said it was better if it stayed between us. Something about the school and legal issues with driving and everything. Plus, you know, the water fountain thing. If you let one person get a drink of water, then you have to let everyone get a drink of water. Ms. Bixby was afraid we'd all want to go grocery shopping with her, Steve asks. Something like that, I say. Bixby, I hate grocery shopping, he says. Yes, well, when you have to start cooking all your dinners or else you won't eat, you suddenly take an interest, I think. But I don't say it. So that's it, Topher says? That's your big secret? You and Ms. Bixby went Krogering together? For a minute there I thought, but he doesn't finish that thought. That's it, I say. But it wasn't quite. The whole truth is this. Ms. Bixby saved me. From the snow that first day and from other things on other days. From the fog I woke up in. From the dark clouds that sometimes followed me. From carrying so much weight all around me all the time. So when I think about that fog that's lifting, it reminds me of the story we read, Princess in the Fog. So it kind of sounds like he might have some depression that was really bothering him. So he really looked forward to these grocery shopping days. There were days I thought about leaving town, taking off somewhere. I don't know where, just away. I would stand in the door to my room, staring out across the hall at my father, sitting in his recliner, legs covered with a blanket, whether he was cold or not, just so he wouldn't have to look at them, staring at some show that he couldn't possibly care a thing about the world's cutest puppies or someone trying to eat too many hamburgers, thinking, no doubt, about how life wasn't fair. To lose my mom and then his legs, to have to raise a kid when he can barely get out of a chair to take a shower. I would watch him and think that neither of us was doing the other any favors. If I left, he'd have no choice but to start taking care of himself. He'd have to do his own laundry, wash his own dishes. If I left, he'd be forced to buy his own groceries. Then I wouldn't have to make that long walk anymore. The walk was the worst. Every step reminding me that I could do that. Reminding what I could do that he couldn't. What I had to do that he didn't. I resented every moment I spent in the store, knowing this was food I would end up making and cleaning up after. If I left, he'd be forced to go himself or just sit in the chair and starve. Some days, the worst days, I thought maybe that's what he deserved. He was my father. He was supposed to be taking care of me. Then Ms. Bixby came and pulled up beside me, by accident the first time, but after that, right on schedule, Friday afternoons, with the sun blushing and Ms. Bixby holding her sunglasses in her teeth as we stopped at bins by the entrance to look over the strawberries. And she would ask me questions, not about school necessarily, but about me, what I was interested in, if I'd ever seen the ocean, what my favorite flavor of ice cream was, if I liked dogs or cats better. She didn't ask about my parents. I'm sure it was all in my file at school. It was as if she knew that this 1 hour was all I had, and she didn't want to waste it. She told me about her, not that much, but more than Miss Bixby, the teacher, ever would. She told me that she was married once for 6 years, till she came to the conclusion that her husband was a jerk. Which she always kind of knew, but hoped otherwise. That he wasn't going to change anytime soon, a conclusion that she took longer to come to. She told me about her trip to Australia when she was in high school and the time she broke her arm falling in the trampoline. She told me about how her brother, who was in the army but was coming home on leave soon, and her own dad, an English professor who lived out east and who used to pack her scraps of paper with quotes from his favorite books in her lunchbox, which explained one thing at least. The Bixbyisms were an inheritance. She also told me that she spent a lot of time alone as a kid, that it was hard for her to make friends sometimes, and that she used to spend whole afternoons just walking around the train tracks that ran parallel to her neighborhood, thinking that one day she wouldn't turn around and go back. She would just keep on walking as far as the tracks would take her. But she never did, she said, because your troubles are like your shadow. You can't always see them, but you can't run from them either. Some days she was serious. Other days she would tell jokes or stories about former students, names excluded, and crazy things they had done. She explained how sampling one grape or one cherry wasn't stealing so much as ensuring customer satisfaction. She turned coupon time into a math lesson. She apologized right after. It was instinct. Couldn't be helped. And made me stop to admire carnations at the florist's. Carnations get a bad rap, she said, because they're cheaper than roses. But she liked them better because they fight harder. Roses are quitters. They give up and die before you can even get used to them being around. It's amazing how fast an hour at the grocery store can go, how fast your cart fills up, how soon you find yourself paying and marveling at how much it costs just to survive. She would tell me how half the stuff I bought was likely to kill me if I kept eating it, especially the hot dogs. Too much processed meat is bad for your health, she said. In that case, I have nothing to worry about, I told her, holding up the package. There's no actual meat in these things. I sometimes tried too hard to make her laugh. When we finished and had our bags packed in the trunk, hers on the right, mine to the left, she would drive me back to the corner and say, "See you Monday," and tell me to find some time for reading over the weekend. She usually said she had a good time, though I always thought she was just saying it to be nice. She always told me to take care of myself, except for the night we spent in the emergency room. She didn't say any of those things then. Alright, and I'm going to stop there, and we'll look at part 2 of this chapter next time. So all we know so far is that, we know that part of what Ms. Bixby was, why she was so special to Brand, the fact that she really helped him and spent that quality time getting to know him. And we know the second part has something to do with the emergency room. And there were other little bits of hints that I want you to think about in the story of why she was in the emergency room with Brand. Okay? So until next time.